Yo, what is going on, guys? Hockey Guy 1 here. Welcome to my review of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. So Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is directed by J.J. Abrams and stars Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, John Boyega, Adam Driver, Mark Hamill, Billy D. Williams, and Ian McDiarmid. The story is about the Resistance who can find out that Palpatine is still alive, so Rey, Finn, Poe, 3PO, Chewie, all of our main characters have to, go on this mission to find some clues to find out where Exegol is so they can go out there and defeat the Emperor. Well, I'm pretty mixed on the story. I like the whole idea of kind of having a mission, find out clues, and I like that whole idea of the story, and I do think it's pretty well executed for the most part, I'd say, with the whole, bringing back Palpatine thing and, the whole mission to try and find out where Exegol is. I think that whole part of the story is executed well, and I do think that part of it, at least, is pretty consistent throughout the movie. I'm pretty mixed on the structure, even. The second act is pretty good. I think that's where it's mostly done well. And they do a good job keeping the consistent mission throughout, and they go into, all these different planets, and even they going back to, a different version of Endor, and then the climax where everything pays off. That whole scene was just really engaging to watch. Just seeing Emperor Palpatine just getting more powerful, and Rey and Kylo Ren standing up to him, and it's just it's well paid off for how the rest of the movie is. It's definitely the highest point of the movie, and it's just very engaging, and it's really works out as the highest point of the movie because it's just really engaging, and it's also pretty emotional. It does have its moments to, and even with and they even have Rey growing up and having all the power of the Jedi, which is really powerful moment for her, and I definitely really like the scene. I do feel the pacing was done very well. This movie's the longest Star Wars movie, and it honestly feels it goes by pretty fast. I don't really get that bored throughout. The story just keeps me engaged a lot during the second act. I don't really get that much bored, and then it just feels each scene does connect with each other and does really work for the movie overall. So I do feel it was paced pretty well. You can definitely tell that they really cared about the action when making this. The action is just very good. It's just very good and entertaining throughout. You got the whole climax, I mentioned earlier, which is just a fun action scene, and it's a lot of tension to it, and it's gonna come out. And then there's the multiple times that Rey and Kylo Ren had lightsaber duels in this movie, and all of them really felt entertaining. It just really worked out well for this movie. And it just felt really engaging, because you don't really know, will Rey join him or will she not? It's just a lot of tension to it, and you really don't know whether you're gonna do it or not. Rey was a well-written character in this movie. I really like the direction and kind of took her character. In the first two movies, they did a pretty good job with her, I felt like. Other than the whole Mary Sue element, she was fine the first two movies. But in this movie, I definitely think they do a good job of going through with her character development in this movie, as it does kind of show more about how her force powers, how she has more abilities, and how much stronger she is with the force, and it just shows even who's actually she's related to. It's just this really good reveal that it's something we've been waiting for the whole trilogy, and we finally got that answer in this movie. And I do think that now was the right time to answer that question. I do feel it was fair to wait this long, and I definitely think that it was satisfying. That makes no sense because of how powerful she is in the Force. And this, what they did with her character, just having her like have all this power of the Jedi by the end, I mean, it just kind of shows to show how much she's like developed as this good person in it. And it's just really good how they end up writing her character in this movie, as it is very well executed in my opinion. Also felt like the Poe was pretty well written. I mean, they definitely add a lot more depth. They kind of show like a past friend that he had and how much like he cared about. I mean, they did a pretty good job with that, and really like kind of showing his past friends and how like he sort of cared before that. And I definitely think they do a good job of kind of like developing him as like the sort of captain, you know, the resistance kind of. I mean, he just like kind of like held them out, and he's kind of like arrogant at first, even like he's thinking that he's right all the time, and over time, that definitely does kind of like come on the way out of him, like over time, especially by the time the climax hits. I mean, by the time the climax hits, he's kind of like just kind of, you know, trying to get through it and taking his time, kind of. And I do think they do a good job like developing his character that way. I'm kind of mixed on Kylo Ren in this movie. I mean, they do some good elements to his character. Like, I do like the whole redemption arc. I mean, you know, I think it makes sense for the redemption arc. I mean, that's having a certain person that was killed in this franchise. I just kind of like give him tips around the visions and try to redeem himself. I mean, that was a really powerful moment when that certain person came and tried to give him tips, and he just kind of did something else after that. I mean, that was just a really powerful moment, and I definitely think that really helped throughout his redemption arc. But however, there are some things about his character that I didn't like that I'll get into later. The acting was very good. I mean, Daisy Ridley does really feel like Rey. I mean, she does a very good job with her acting. I mean, each time, like, Rey is kind of, like, serious for a lot of this movie, so she gets kind of a serious face most of it. So it really works out well for her acting there, and in, like, just her delivery just feels confident and really matches the tone of what Rey's supposed to be. Same thing kind of goes for, like, John Boyega. I mean, he's really trying in his role as Finn. He just really feels like he wants to be there, just kind of, like, giving a very emotional kind of performance because he's trying to be like the character kind of. Then there's Oscar Isaac as well. He's trying to be like the character, really feeling like him. He's doing a very good job there. And kind of like Adam Driver, who I did felt does do a really good job throughout this franchise, I feel like, at least in the 3 movies that he's in. I mean, he does really feel like Kylo Ren. Is just the way he acts and like just his whole delivery of it just makes him feel like the character, and he actually seems like he actually wants to be there and is really trying to deliver his lines well. And then of course Mark Hamill is in this movie for a couple scenes, not for many, because obviously he died in The Last Jedi. But when he's like here in this movie, I do think that he did a pretty good job for what it is in it, for the most part. And then there's Ian McDiarmid, of course, on back, and of course, as always, he's very good as Palpatine, as he does always feel very intimidating with his delivery, his whole laugh, just his whole intimidating, evil delivery, just is what makes him feel like the character so much. Visual effects are just great. I mean, once again, it's top notch, just like this sequel trilogy has done, I feel like, throughout. I mean, the whole looks of Exegol is definitely most of CGI, and I definitely think the background look real enough, and they do a pretty good job with it. And then just like the whole water effects on like the Endor places, it just feels really smooth, and it actually looks like actual water around it. And then there's the whole lightsabers, which actually look pretty well, and they do a pretty good job with CGI in that. Cinematography is very good. I do feel like they use the correct camera angles for most scenes, like action scenes. I do feel like, I mean, they use a bunch of different camera angles, but each one of them feel like they actually are needed. Like, just kind of looking at like the whole lightsaber duel, they use one over here, they use another shot like on the other side, and then kind of use as many angles as you can just to try and capture the scene and motion at multiple times. And I feel like that's well executed, and it's a good way to like use the camera angles, in my opinion. And then there's like the whole climax where there's a bunch of camera angles trying to like capture the scene, and I feel like they captured it well. And I honestly feel like they just kind of like capture each scene well whenever they use their camera angles. The editing is pretty good. I mean, whenever it goes from shot to shot, it feels pretty smooth. It feels like they're connected into one full scene, completing the scene. And it just felt like that it's, well, I mean, it doesn't really feel like there's anything wrong with it. I mean, it's not choppy or anything. It just feels very smooth as it goes from one shot to another, and it's just well put together. That said, this movie does have its negatives, and starting off, like I said earlier, the story's kind of mixed, and these are like some of the elements that I didn't really like about it. I mean, I felt like they just didn't do a very good job explaining how Palpatine's right. I mean, I felt like the whole thing, they didn't justify it very well. They just kind of just went the lazy way out and said that he cloned himself. I mean, I felt like that was just very lazy writing, in my opinion, and it doesn't really help out the story very well, in my opinion. I felt like that just more feels like the ending of Return of the Jedi is kind of useless when they kind of just had that kind of explanation for it. Structure is also pretty mixed to me. I mean, I think I said earlier, I mean, there's obviously the Emperor stuff that's in the first act that I do feel like wasn't very executed well, but there's also other things in it that I didn't really like. I mean, it didn't really make that much sense to me to have Kylo Ren to try and being hunting down the Emperor. I mean, do you really know that? What I told it, I mean, it just feels like a completely random plot point in my opinion. I mean, he is Supreme Leader now, and he doesn't really want threats to him, but I still don't really feel like it makes that much sense for the movie to really start out that way. And then the whole, like, ending of this movie, I felt like was just not the right way to end off the saga. I mean, I felt like it was just completely disrespectful to the Skywalker name. I mean, you know, it just kind of, like, gave the Skywalker name to someone who's not a Skywalker at the end. And I felt like that was just disrespectful, in my opinion, and that's just, in my opinion, that's just not the right way to end off just such a big saga like this. And I felt like they didn't do enough with him. I mean, they didn't really do very well with his character development. I mean, they did a good job with, like, the other two main characters, Rey and Poe, but I don't really feel like Finn was done very well. I mean, they did some things with his character, I guess. They did, like, show these other stormtroopers that were in the battle and showing that there are some similar people to him, but that's, like, literally pretty much the only thing that they really added with this character that doesn't really feel like a completely new character. I don't feel like he grew at all throughout this movie. It just doesn't even feel like he changed. I mean, he just feels like the same character. I mean, there's barely any differences with this character, and they just don't do enough with him, in my opinion. I don't like what they did with Leia, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, they didn't really do much with her. Most of this movie, she's not really doing anything. She doesn't really have that major of a role in this movie. I mean, in last movie, I guess it's kind of the same way, but she did, like, end up having some character in that movie, so I kind of gave that a pass. But in this movie, she didn't really have much to do. I mean, she just showed at the beginning, like, she said she was training Rey, and then she doesn't really do much after that. I mean, she just stands there, and then all of a sudden, she just kind of, I didn't really like what they did with her, the last thing they did with her, just the whole way they kind of sent her off. I did not agree with the way they sent her off, and it just wasn't very smart, in my opinion, and I felt like they could have done better. And I honestly just felt like he was here for fan service. I mean, he barely did anything in this movie, and he only had, like, a couple of scenes. He doesn't really have a major role in this film. I mean, I don't know why they really brought him back. I mean, this movie could have easily been done without him. He doesn't really do much in this movie. He just really feels like he's here for the fans, and that's about it. Now we're gonna kind of get to some things I didn't really like about Kylo Ren's character, and that's kind of like, I did like, of course, the redemption arc. I mean, they did a pretty good job with that, and just kind of just put in through a whole arc, and like kind of redemption. And I mean, that really felt good, like I mentioned earlier, but But these are some aspects I didn't like about his character. I mean, just the whole Raylo thing, I mean, it's ridiculous that they brought that even into this movie. I mean, it just showed up once near the end of the movie, and really, that's it. It didn't really grow at all throughout this movie. It just felt like people who were shipping it, and that's about it. I mean, he just really showed them once at the end of the movie, didn't really grow upon it, and that's the one thing I didn't really get about Kylo Ren's character. Emperor Palpatine just didn't really feel like he did much as a main villain in this movie. I mean, he just didn't really feel that intimidating here. I mean, you know, he does have like a couple of scenes where he's kind of intimidating. I mean, just like in the climax, when he like nearly defeats him. Like, I mean, that did feel kind of intimidating. But that's like the only time. I mean, other than that, in this movie, he really does feel like he doesn't do much. I mean, for the most part, he's just sitting down, not really doing anything, to be honest. I mean, I felt like that they should have done much better with his character if they wanted to bring him back so badly. Overall, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker may be a flawed movie, but it's still a very enjoyable movie. So I'm going to give Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker a 7 out of 10. That was my review of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. What are your thoughts on Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker? Tell me in the comments below. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.